This is the third part of Class 12 Commerce Chapter 2 Capital, Fixed and Working. In this part, we are going to discuss about the fixed capital and working capital. So, fixed capital is the fund which is invested for acquiring or purchasing fixed assets. So, generally, these assets are not fixed in value, but when utilized in business, it is kept in the business for a long period of time. Hence, they are also termed as block capital. So, here's the definition given by Shubin, that is, fixed capital means the fund required for the acquisition of those assets that are to be used over and over for a long period, such as land, building, machinery, equipment and tools. So let us discuss about the factors which affects the fixed capital. The first one is nature of business. Now, if you have a manufacturing business, so in case of a manufacturing business, you need more amount of fixed capital. On the other hand, if you have a trading concern, you will need less amount of fixed capital investment. Also, if you have a public utility undertaking, for example, railways, electricity supply, city transport, this undertakings also require huge amount of investment in fixed assets. The second point is size of the business. For example, if you are running a manufacturing industry, now what scale of operation your industries or your organization is having, that also determines the amount of fixed capital. Suppose the scale of operation is large in your enterprise, so you will require huge investment in fixed capital. And if the scale of operation is low, then you will require less amount of fixed capital investment. The third point is nature of the products. Now, if your products are manufacturing capital goods like machineries, engines, so in that case you will require huge amount of fixed capital investment. On the other hand, if you are producing consumer goods like hair oil, toothpaste, toothbrush, so you will require less amount of fixed capital investment. Method of production. Now, if the method of production employed by your business is capital intensive, like every day, every now and then you require new technologies, new advanced machineries, so in that case you will require more amount or huge amount of fixed capital investment. On the other hand, if you are going for labor intensive techniques, so you will require less amount of fixed capital. The fifth point is diversity of product lines. That means when a company is producing in diversified products, so it will require more amount of fixed capital than the company which is investing or producing a single line of product. The last point is number 6 point, mode of acquiring fixed asset. Now, if you are purchasing fixed assets in on cash basis, so your fixed capital investment will be more. On the other hand, if your business is taking this fixed assets on lease or on hire purchase, so your fixed capital investment will be less. Now, let us discuss about the working capital. So, working capital is the amount of liquid fund which is required on a day-to-day basis for operating the business efficiently. So, according to Justin Burke, circulating capital means current assets of a company that are changed in the ordinary course of business from one form to another, as for example, from cash to inventories, inventories to receivables, receivables into cash. It is also known as circulating capital or revolving capital. Why it is known as a circulating capital? Because it is continuously circulating in the business from one form to another, and it is utilized for day-to-day operation of the business. This is the operating or circulating capital cycle. That is, if we have cash, we will purchase raw materials. From this raw materials, we will send this raw materials to the factories for production. From this, we will get the final product. These final products are being sold. Either it is sold in cash or it is sold in credit. So there will be receivables in the form of debtors, bills receivables, and ultimately again we'll get cash. So this is a cycle which is followed every time. Next point is working capital is used in two senses. So working capital is used in two senses. What are those? First one is gross working capital. Second one is net working capital. So gross working capital is when the total amount is invested in current assets, that is known as gross working capital. When there is an excess of current assets over current liability, that is my net working capital. So as we have learned the formula also, the net working capital equals to current assets minus current liability. Now here we'll discuss about the types of working capital. So we already know what are working capital. So working capital is further subdivided into permanent working capital and temporary working capital. So what is permanent working capital? So the minimum amount of working capital which is invested in current assets or which is locked up in current assets is known as permanent working capital, and it is there. This amount of investment is raised from long term sources of fund, otherwise the firm won't be able to run smoothly. Temporary working capital, this is the working capital which is utilized in addition to permanent working capital. This is not required throughout the year, but it is only required during certain seasonal time or any special situation. So this is all fluctuating in nature, and hence the name is given as temporary working capital. Now, permanent working capital is subdivided into initial working capital and regular working capital. So from the name itself, initial. So initial means from the starting period of the business or from the commencement of the business. That is, in the initial stage when the business invests money in purchasing current assets, those capital investment is termed as initial working capital. Second one is regular working capital. That means for day-to-day working of the business, when the firm needs certain amount of capital to run its business operations. So that is known as regular working capital. That is actually the excess of current assets over current liabilities. Now coming on to the temporary working capital, again it is further subdivided into seasonal working capital and spatial working capital. Now seasonal working capital means, see, there are certain business or certain products which are produced during a certain time of the year. For example, woolen goods, wheat production. So these are produced in a certain period, and these are not available throughout the year. So in this cases we have to pile up some stock of this product so that they can be utilized throughout the year by the businessman. So for that, the businessman needs some extra amount of capital to purchase such stocks in bulk. So for this purpose, this seasonal working capital has come into existence. The second one is special working capital. Now see, there, if you are running a business, there might be some future emergencies which might arise, and the business might need some additional funds to cope up with this emergency situations or unforeseen situations. For example, it might be natural calamity, strikes, lockouts, or if there is a sudden rise in the business, sudden downfall in the economy. All these cases, the business requires some special or extra amount of capital to overcome such losses. Next, we'll discuss about the importance of working capital. Now, if you have this sufficient amount of working capital, we can pay our dues in time, and this will help us to meet our short-term obligations. Smooth working. Now see, if you have adequate amount of working capital, you can purchase raw materials anytime required in your business. You can pay wages and salaries on time. You can meet your the business can meet its expenses on time. So this will help in the production and distribution of the organization or goods and services in a proper way without any interruption. The third point is high credit worthiness. High credit worthiness, that means when a business has is having a adequate amount of working capital, it will have a high credit standing. So this will add a benefit to the business for raising loans from banks and financial institutions. The next point is cash discount. Now see, when you have sufficient amount of or adequate amount of liquid funds in your hand, and so you will be paying your suppliers quite often, and your suppliers will also give you a cash discount in return. So this is a benefit given by the suppliers to the business. The fifth point is availing business opportunities. Now when suppose suddenly there is a supplier who comes to you and give you a offer to purchase some goods in bulk, so that you can sell those goods, you can purchase those goods at a lower price, and you can sell them at a higher price later on. And if you see that, yeah, there is a scope of this product to have a higher price in the future, you can keep those stock and sell it in the for and use it in the future. So for this type of opportunities, if you have sufficient working capital in hand, you can execute those plans. So this is also giving you a bargaining power, and it is also giving you a competitive strength. Next point, number six point, is good relations with employees. So sufficient working capital means you can pay your wages and salaries to the employees in time. So this is giving a sense of safety and security to your employees. The last point is timely payment of dividend. Now when you are having adequate amount of working capital and you are paying your dividends in time. So this is actually giving a good sense of security to your shareholders that yes, the company is running in profit, or the company is having a good reputation in the market. Next point is factors affecting working capital. So these are similar to the points which we have learned in the fixed capital. The first one is nature of business. Now a manufacturing firm will require more amount of working capital than a public utility undertaking. As you know, a public utility undertaking is a railways, electricity, which requires more amount of fixed capital but a less amount of working capital. But in case of a manufacturing firm, they require raw materials on a daily basis. So or they have to build a stock of this raw materials. They have to pay the wages and salaries of the uh, employees also. So they will require more amount of working capital. Next is size of the business. Now a firm which is based on large scale operation or undertaking will require more amount of working capital than a small scale firm. Suppose if I am if we are discussing about a large suppose a departmental store and a small retailer or a small hawker, so definitely we can tell that a departmental store will require more amount of working capital. Why? Because he is investing in many sorts of products, and it also has many employees. So this will definitely require more working capital than a small retailer shop or a hawker. Third point is manufacturing cycle. Manufacturing cycle is the time gap between the purchase of raw materials and production of finished goods. Now in this time period, if the time period is more, you will require more of working capital because some amount of capital is going to be engaged in this cycle. So you need more amount of capital for the running of the business. And if this time period is short, so you will require less amount of working capital. The fourth point is rapidity of turnover. That means how quickly the amount of working capital is converted into sales. So the more quickly the sales is taking place, so the working capital required is less. And if the sales is occurring after a long period of time, or it is not the sales is not on a continuous basis, in that case your working capital will be locked up and you will require more amount of working capital. Next comes terms of purchase and sale. Now, if you are purchasing goods on credit and selling them in cash, you definitely require less amount of working capital. On the other hand, if you are purchasing in cash and selling in credit, so you will require more amount of working capital. Sixth one is the credit policy. Now, the credit policy means the amount, we can say that how quickly you are going to pay your creditors, or how quickly you are going to get from your debtors. So this type of credit policy also determines how much amount of working capital is required in the business. So if you have a liberal credit policy, you will require more amount of working capital, because liberal means they have the freedom to take time and pay. The debtors will have more time to pay you. If you have a strict or tight credit policy, so you will require smaller amount of working capital. The next point is number 7, operating efficiency. Now, when you are utilizing your resources in a proper way, so it will reduce your cost and it will improve your profitability. So as a result, your working capital requirement will be less. Also, if your profit margin is high and you are having regular sales, so this will also reduce the working capital requirement in your business. The last point is goodwill of the business. Now, when the business is enjoying a good reputation in the market, so we can, or the business can get quick loans from commercial banks or other financial institutions. Thus, it will need less amount of working capital. The last point is comparison between fixed and working capital. That is fixed capital. So meaning of fixed capital is investment in fixed assets, and meaning of working capital is investment in current assets. This is a long time the investment is done for a long time period. The investment is done for a short time period. Generally, the amount invested in fixed capital does not circulate, but in working capital, the fund keeps on circulating. Talking about the sources of fixed capital, the sources of fixed capital are shares, debentures, and long-term loans. The sources of working capital are banks, that is short-term loans, trade credits, and public deposits. What is the purpose of fixed capital? To generate income. And what is the purpose of working capital? To meet day-to-day expenses of the business. The another term for fixed capital is block capital. Another term for working capital is circulating capital. So that's all for this part. Thank you.